All right, good afternoon, everybody. We're running a little behind here. We'll just wait a few minutes for people to join, and then we'll get in. If you haven't logged in yet, go to giraffe.build and log in. The location for that is right here. I'll share my screen. So if you go to the giraffe.build website, you can hit the big login button or the get started free button if you haven't signed up for an account yet. And that'll take you through to a form that you can submit, and that'll log you in. And if you've been to Giraffe before or you haven't been in a while, feel free to go ahead and just hit log in, and that'll take you straight there. I think Holly's dropped that in the chat. So what we cover usually in a Giraffe 101 is the very, very initial stages of setting up Giraffe, getting in, connecting to some data, uh, starting a project, and then understanding that project from an analytical point of view. And what we're trying to do here is establish the foundation of your knowledge about how Giraffe thinks so that you can take it and do anything with it. My name's James. I've been with Giraffe since 2020, and Holly is here with us, who's also been with Giraffe since 2022, I think. So you've got the OG Giraffe team here, and we're going to walk through these initial steps together. So once you've logged in, you should see something that looks like this. The Giraffe logo, and then you'll jump in most likely to your home screen or to a blank project. It's been a while since I've logged in as a new user, so I should probably test that. Quick overview of what I'm seeing here, or what you're seeing on the screen. This is what's called the home screen. And if you click the logo in the top left, it'll take you to your home screen. Your home screen is all your projects on a map, along with any GIS data that we've added to it and saved to our home screen. So we won't spend too long here. I think we'll dive into a location. You can see at the top, we have a search map option. Why don't you go ahead and in that search map location, plug in a site that's interesting to you. I'm going to put in the location of my office, just fully doxing myself. And you can see the more specific I am, the better the algorithm is for, sorry, the search machine is for finding it. Drops a pin, and then I can just dive in. So as I dive in, you notice it's dropped a point on my parcel. And I can see the parcel. So depending on where you are in the world, you can go to Giraffe's layer library, which is up here on the left, and you can add in any data that's interesting to you. If you're in the US, type parcel, and there's a good chance you'll find publicly available free data sets here that have parcels for your area. If you're outside the US, sometimes it's called boundary, cadastre. It may be in Giraffe, it may not be in Giraffe. If it's not in Giraffe, you can always add data sets. And you see over here on the right-hand side, it says create new layer. For unpaid accounts, create new layer is grayed out. If you're a customer, you'll be able to add your own data layers. So that's just worth noting that is there. You can add anything from a shapefile to a CSV of comparables data. Very helpful to build your own library of data. The data set I showed you is one we sell. If you have it already, you can just type in regrid and see regrid nationwide parcels here. This is really great in the US or in Canada, where you want to look at all the parcels outside of the county boundaries, and you want to save yourself a ton of time. It's a great data set. I'm not going to spend too long on it, but if you're interested in it, let me know and we'll make it available to you via your subscription. So I'm going to create a new project here. I'm not going to use the boundary because most of you don't have it. And I'm going to just do that by hitting on the top left here, new project, okay? And when I create a new project, because I have an enterprise account, I'm gifted with all the different templates that I set up. I obviously just want it to be blank, so it's going to come through as blank. And in order to start doing some meaningful work, I need to draw a boundary. Now that boundary can be defined by the GIS data set that we brought in for the parcel outlines or whatever other way we want to think about our boundary. Because I don't have that on right now, I'm just going to freehand draw my boundary on the satellite. So turn the satellite on. I could sort of see the neighboring building here. So I'm just going to go like this. And, it's amazing how good this is in the case of not having any good data. Like even from just looking at the satellite, using the 3D maps data, I can start to get within an order of magnitude and maybe even more accurate than that, a sense of my parcel boundary and its dimensions. So I'm going to save that, close that parcel boundary, edit boundary function, and I'm going to hit save. Let's go ahead and save our project. Example 1, 2, 3. Again, because I have an enterprise account, I can customize the fields against my saved project, but we'll ignore that for now, and we'll just go through to our standard project. Okay, when you save a project, you'll notice we have a different set of tools available to us now. This is really important for once you've moved from the home screen through to now you're doing some actual work. I still have data layers on the left, so I can continue to add contextual data layers on the left. But I now have tools at my disposal. The top, you can see the drawing tools are all across the top here. We'll go through them in a minute. And on the right-hand side, I have the analytical tools. This is a very helpful breakdown and consistent throughout the apps where the left-hand side functions as, here is all my content, help me manage my content via layers. I have drawing layers, mapping layers, GIS layers, and then my properties and settings will be over here. My drawing and tools will be in the middle, and on the right-hand side will be my outputs or my analytics. So let's go ahead and remove the 3D buildings on our site. This is a common request we get, and it is a good example of showing a slightly more advanced GIS feature. So I'm going to go to the base map and just explode that group of layers. And you can see I've got lots of different layers in here. I have the 3D buildings, map layers, map labels, trees, etc. You can always add other stuff to groups, by the way. For instance, I wanted to put the satellite layer in there. Ollie, how do I move layers? Do I have to grab the 3 dots? Oh no, I grab it over there, sorry. There is an actual handle to grab. So I grabbed that handle and I just dropped it into its own parent. And now you can see that that is in there. So that's nice. If you end up having a lot of GIS data, just being able to pull those layers in and out, really handy. So let's go to the 3D buildings layer and you'll see this table icon here. So I want to open that table icon and that's going to bring up all of the metadata for that specific layer. So if I click on that building, we'll see it's highlighting it here in the table. Now I want to add a filter to this data set to remove that building. And I'm going to do that by clicking the filter icon and say draw boundary. I want to exclude my boundary. And I say exclude everything on this site. And there it goes. Okay, so I'll say done with that boundary and save that. Now when I close the table, my building's gone. Perfect, so I've got a nice clean site. I've turned the satellite off and there's my boundary. Now we can start doing something interesting. Before I move on from that, I may have gone a little quick. Does anyone have any questions about how to remove buildings from sites? If you do, throw it in the Q&A. Ollie will be able to answer it as we go. I'm going to keep going if no one's got a burning question. Okay, so the next step really is about drawing something. And with giraffe, you can draw anything at any time, whether it's a pretty picture or something that it really represents built form. I'm going to go up to our drawing tools and just start aligning things to help me think about this site. So what I'm going to do is grab the building tool and I'm going to draw a residential building. So when I click the building typology, I can snap to anywhere on the site in order to start creating something. I could also create a monster. There's nothing in Giraffe that's stopping me from creating a wild shaped building that's way too big for the zoning code. It is, or anybody to build that, right? It's a free creative expression tool. So just to show you that again, I go up to the buildings tab or the buildings icon, and then you can see here are all my pre-baked uses. So grab any one you want. I'm going to grab residential again. And when I draw now, you can see I've got lots of different ways of being able to draw. I can click the first corner, and then I can drag it out and type in exact length, 120 feet, set my angle, and then drag it down, another 120 feet, boom, there's a box. Or I can click and drag. I go back to the residential, I can click and drag, and that'll give me both points at once. I want to be really quick. And that's the basic mechanics of drawing. So if I want to snap, say I want to snap to the corner of my site, I'm holding S and I can just drag it down and S again, and then drag it out and S again. And I'm snapping to the midpoint there. So that's not a bad way to help you be super accurate when you're drawing. You may notice I'm dropping in and out of top view. Top view is T on my keyboard, or down here, there's a 2D, 3D toggle. I find drawing in top view is the most helpful and accurate. And then I hit T to observe the effect in 3 dimensions. So the last thing on drawing before I move on is being able to not just draw rectangles, but take these nodes and edit my geometry. So if you notice this line here, it has a white node, 2 chevrons, a red node, 2 chevrons, and a white node. If you just play with these, you'll see quite quickly what they do. If I grab a node, it moves the corner. If I grab a red node, it creates a new vertex that I can then use to shape the geometry. And if I grab the chevrons, I can extrude my facade or extrude that surface. And that becomes super helpful if you're trying to very quickly say, actually, I want to go 20 feet to the left this way. So those are the basic mechanics of drawing, and they're super fun. And there's lots of advanced things that if you go watch the tutorials, you'll be able to find, such as cut my object, union my object, base point move, where I say, let's move it from here to over here, exactly. And these are, if you're used to CAD software, there's a lot of similarities there between Giraffe and CAD type softwares. Okay, so let's pause on the drawing for a second. And I'm sure, and I hope you are all fiddling around on your side, because really play is the best way to discover how Giraffe works. I would just encourage you to go in there and try and break it, build something really unique and interesting that'll help your brain develop on how Giraffe works. So let's pause on the fun stuff and start looking at the more dry stuff here, which is what's actually happening under the hood from a math point of view. You'll notice as I adjust the number of levels here, that the data on the right-hand side is adjusting. And this is the ultimate value proposition of Giraffe, is that the drawing and the data are actually the same thing. They're actually a database element. So whilst we drew a rectangle, Giraffe immediately applied the residential usage and gave it a number of levels. And both of those things are affecting the data that comes out. The levels are on the rectangle themselves. So on the rectangle, we only really have 3 inputs, I should say. The residential use What kind of use is it? And I can change that if I want to large format retail. The stack order, which is helpful if we're stacking things up and down, if we want two of them. And on top here, we want to put a nice hat. And then the number of levels. And you can see as I change the number of levels, it's reflected in the model. Change the stack order, it's reflected in the model. So that's what parameters that control at the feature level. Now, you may be asking, James, you've got an efficiency here. Like if you go look at our metrics, the gross build area and the net rentable area are obviously different. So somewhere in the math engine of Giraffe, we're applying an efficiency factor that is taking the gross to the net. We've also got an FAR, which is looking at the site area versus all the areas we've drawn. And we have a max height. So clearly we've got a floor to floor, which is telling the model how tall it is. So the key with Giraffe is you want to be able to control and manage those assumptions yourself. If I click on a use and I pop over here to the usage editor, which again is on the left-hand side, and it's connected to the thing we've drawn so we understand where it is, I can see all of the assumptions that are tied to that use. So for residential, it's quite complex. There's a lot of assumptions that are happening here. And think of this very similar to how your Excel spreadsheet functions. When I put in an area, a gross area, I know I can't lease all that floor space because there's corridors and cores and stairwells and that sort of thing. So we need to factor it down by an efficiency. So at the moment, we've got it set at 72% to get to the net rentable. If I was to drop up this to 100% and hit save, you'd notice that net rentable number change over here. Well, let's drop that back down to 70%. And then you can see here's my floor to floor. Here are my dwelling sizes and the assumptions that go along with them, such as the mix, the price per dwelling, if we're looking at rent or if we're offloading as a sale. And then there are further metrics down here, which we won't go into on this meeting, but really quite powerful, which is being able to store any assumption that you want on the use. For instance, what does it cost me to build a residential building? What do we think it'll cost us to design and finance this building? And these can be changed, edited. The logic of how they're calculated can be edited, and we'll come back to that in a minute. Let's go and look at amenity. And you'll see amenity is totally different. It has a higher floor to floor. It's got a different color, obviously. And it has no rent associated with it, much higher cost. And it's more efficient. So again, we could change those assumptions if we wanted to based on the use that we're looking at. So that's the simple walkthrough with how the drawings are related to the math. And as I draw over here on the right-hand side, you can see those assumptions are coming through to give us a final product of something like a number of units or an FAR, depending on what the goal is for our analysis. Now, you could stop there and it would still be a very powerful product. Imagine as you're working at a large scale, even if you're not looking at such a small site, even if you're looking at a large site, how valuable this would be to have your assumptions, your drawings, and your analytics all tied together. Not to mention having your contextual data in there informing your zoning or your wider market intelligence. However, Giraffe does go one step further. Actually, it goes several steps further. And I'm going to only show one of those to you in detail, and I'll show one of them to you in a very light way that we have a deep dive on sometime in the next couple of weeks. So let's take our math here and go a bit further with our math. We call this analytics. So if you hit the second tab here on the right, I'm able to actually build and customize my own expressions. I'm going to start with a blank slab, and we're going to call this life science. Okay, so I'm going to just make up a category of calculations that I want. And instead of thinking about this as a resi project, I might create a new scenario here that is a commercial project we're going to use for life sciences. So let's turn off the default layer. Scenario goes away. let's add a new drawing layer. You see over here on the top left, we've got the new drawing layer icon. Let's hit that. We'll call this life science. And you can see the pencil's gone green. That means I'm drawing on that layer right now. And it's visible. So now let's do the same thing, but now we're going to use 100% of the site. And I'm going to give it the use commercial because I don't yet have a life science use. Okay, and commercial is now going to, let's say it's, a ridiculous height for the zoning. Let's say it's 9 levels, something like this, okay? And now let's take just an assumption here that I have a client that wants to understand how many 3,500 square foot labs we can fit in this space. It's an odd floor plan. And I want to think about it just purely mathematical because we know there'll be a bunch of back of house and other offices that we can put on the side. So let's go in and draw it. Let's go in and do the math. I'm going to go over here to the left and say, let's change our commercial assumptions and build a new product type called life science. I'm going to use commercial as the base. I'll clone it, give it a new name called life science. And life science I want to be green. So let's change it to be green. Let's make our line color white. And I want to add a property here called lab size. So this is the client's metric, not our metric. They have a lab size of 3,500 square feet. We want to see how that's going to drop in. So I'm going to say create a lab size. And the number here, create a property called lab size is 3,500. So now I've built a new assumption on a new product type. And I'm going to just say to the model now, actually, don't have commercial as your use. Let's change it to life science. Boom. So now we've got this new life science designation over here. You can see that coming through. And I want to build a custom calculation. So I'm going to hit the little plus here under our category of life science that we made. And we're going to say, go get the saleable area, because we can't put labs in corridors, and divide it by the lab size, A over B. Oops, sorry, because the name of the calculation is number of labs. And it's unitless because we're just counting. I've got the two metrics I need, which is the area, the net area, and B, the size of the lab. So we'll just say A, where A is the saleable area, divided by B, where B is the lab size. Let's round it down because we don't want partial labs. And boom, we've got our little metric here. If we wanted to go a step further and put a cost on that, we could go and say, go get me my number of labs, A, and multiply it by $75,000. Oops. Boom. Okay. And now this is fully parametric. Now we may want to consider how many labs there are in our default scenario, which obviously it's a different use. So the answer is going to be 0. But let's get those two scenarios side by side. We can do that by popping up to the top right and saying, split my project by layer. Now you can see on my default scenario, there are no labs and no fit out costs. And on my life science scenario, there are 17 and 1.3 million in fit out costs. So that's a very quick look at taking your assumptions data and building something bespoke. Again, anytime you put in here is going to pay back 10x because you can use it on future projects as a template. So again, we'll cover that in a different video, which is how do you take your content and make it valuable to the organization at scale. So let's have a look. I said we'd touch briefly on one other extension here, and that is generative design. Generative design in Giraffe is extremely fun and extremely powerful. And depending on what you're trying to do, it could either be an enabler for you to do something complex really quickly, or you could spend the next 3 months learning the ins and outs of the flow builder and building a bespoke generative algorithm for your firm. So it really depends what problem you're trying to solve. And I'll only show you a very short snippet of it. And we have a deep dive on it in the next few weeks that we'll invite you all to. So generative features you can find in the lightning bolt. You can see these are all just standard massing elements. Buildings, landscape, infrastructure, land uses if you're interested in urban planning or strategic planning type use cases, basic geometries. The lightning bolt is where it gets wild. It gets really wild and really fun. So I'm going to grab two standard flows here and just show you what they look like. The first is parking. Okay, so parking is one of those really painstaking tasks. It's great for a computer to do. It's a low value design, high value, low input design problem where it's like I have a polygon, I need to optimize within the polygon the number of spaces. All those spaces are roughly the same size. What can we get to? And as I move that polygon around, it resolves and you'll get the number over here of spaces. Really cool. And you can always reference that in your analytics tab as well. The other one is apartments. Apartments, again, is a high value repetitive design process. Now, when I draw that source geometry, what's happening there is the algorithm is solving for an optimal floor plan. And you compare that to the massing where we put the efficiency as an input. In this situation, the efficiency is solved for by a design algorithm. And I can always edit that design algorithm and change what the mix is, just like I did on the others. But instead of it being hypothetical, the algorithm's trying to optimize the floor space. So those are the simple tools. And if you want to do a deep dive in generative design, Holly has sent the link through to register. There's so many fun things here that are pre-configured, like our perpendicular parking. What else have we got? Road with trees either side. Tons of things here to help accelerate your design workflows. Row of trees, that's a classic. We need to bend a row of trees around. If you're an industrial developer, we have great industrial flows for cross dock, rear dock, those kind of standard product types. What else do we have in here? So definitely go play with this stuff. Townhomes. And just, again, see what you like, see what you can break. And then if there's something here that's interesting to you, join the generative design deep dive and we'll take you on a journey through time and space. I think that's all we've got scheduled for today. So unless there are specific questions, we might give it a wrap. I'll stop talking and leave some space for somebody to ask a question. And then in 3 minutes, we'll wrap it up. Great comment, Ren. Love seeing that. Yes, the parking algorithm is the bomb. And there are so many other cool little things that'll go with it. The library of tutorials, I think we should, Holly, if you could link the Giraffe Academy to in the chat, that would be awesome. Giraffe Academy is a YouTube channel that has a series of tutorials that go through what I just went through in 5-minute increments. And I think that is the ultimate resource. You know, when you're learning a piece of software, you want to invest time to, okay, understand it conceptually, which is really what this session is about. But then it's like, okay, let me go and actually use it and try it. And those 5-minute videos are awesome. The other thing I'll mention is down in the bottom right here, there is a little AI assistant, okay? And that AI assistant is terrifyingly accurate. So if you were to ask it a question of how do I filter a layer, it's read all of our knowledge base and it knows exactly what to do. So again, experimentation is the key. That's what's going to drive and reinforce your knowledge. And then those videos are great. And the AI is really helpful for if you get stuck. And then, of course, you can always reach out to Whole AI for any kind of help that you might need as you're going through. Recording, we'll share. Definitely, that'll come through. I think it comes through in an automated email once it's processed. Oh, very good question. We'll answer that before we jump. This is a parking ratio question. Some people like to do it at the dwelling level. Others like to do it just for the number of dwellings multiplied by a ratio. Personally, I like to do it at the dwelling level. So it depends which method you're using, whether you're using flows or whether you're using the massing. So if we're using the flow, you'll see over here, I need to go to the unit typology. So for 1-bedroom unit, and I need to change the number of cars per dwelling. That will change the parking ratio. If I go to 2-bedroom unit, then I can change it there, 3-bedroom, etc. If I'm using the massing, then I can just go straight to residential and do it for all of them in one screen. And then I saw we have a question about joining together multiple algorithms if we're doing a E-block. And I will show you this, although it's going into advanced territory, okay? So if I have this guy here, here's our C block, and we want to add an E block in the middle. We need to firstly draw a line. So I'm just going to hit L to draw the line. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to frighten some people on the call. So I'm going to open the flow editor, Flow 2.0, drop down to residential apartments. And we just need to create another input here called get feature, I believe. Or is it read feature?
It's get raw.
No, it's not get raw. It's can you get
Oh,
raw
reference.
individual?
Reference.
Reference feature. Perfect, thank you. We should add that as a picker. And then we go pick. Close that down. Oop. Let me make my screen bigger here so I've got some more real estate. Sorry, I'll go there. Shrink this down. I'll say pick. I want that guy. Okay, so now it's building the algorithm on both, and then I just smush them together. And now when I solve for a mix, it's going to solve across the eye. And Aria, what we will add, I think, is likely the ability to hit that click without having to open up the spaghetti diagram. There we go. Very cool. Oh, an E-block does look good, doesn't it? I love a good E-block. All right. Well, if there are no more questions, we'll call it for the session. And if you have any detailed questions or you would like to attend that generative design deep dive, let's make it happen. Looking forward to working with you all. Talk to you soon.